I don't know about you guys, but in my team comps, healers are a must. I've been playing since launch, but to this day, I cannot rely on shields or iframing to keep my party alive. It's a skill issue, I know. Welcome back to my signature weapon series. For this video, we'll be looking at my weapon concepts for Barbara, Dori, Sayu, and Yaoyao, 4 of the staple healers in Genshin. As always, pause now to read all the disclaimers if you need to, and they are available to read in the description of this video. Music credits, social media links, and timestamps are also available down below. Without further ado, let's begin. With Barbara, she has the same issues as Chi-Chi. All of her utility revolves around healing. Now, there is another mechanic that she has, but it's not necessarily a good mechanic, and it's where every 5 seconds, she applies the wet status to your active character. We can't really get around this mechanic, so we might as well use it to our advantage. For my weapon concept, Deaconess Prayer, it'll have a 454 base attack and a 55.1% HP bonus. For its passive, when the user applies an element onto an ally, the user's elemental skill cooldown decreases by 1.5 seconds, and that ally gains a base damage bonus based on 1-2% of the user's max HP for 5 seconds. If the user is off-field, this bonus is immediately doubled. The cooldown reduction can trigger while off-field. In addition to me wanting to make use of a mechanic I didn't like, it kinda fits, since my weapon concept for Jean relied on her animo application. Since they're sisters, it worked thematically. But to run you through this idea, Barbara will periodically apply Hydra to the active character. By doing this, you grant a damage bonus to that character. It's a pretty big bonus too, which will help her have a more meaningful role in some teams. Compared to Stealing Tails, which is mainly Barbara's best support weapon, this weapon is a lot more universal, since it can work on units with non-attack scaling. Combined with the cooldown reduction, this weapon has much better uptime, and the passive trigger allows it to be more flexible in rotations. I assume most people have Barbara at C6, so all the numbers will be assumed as such. Barbara's cooldown is at base 32 seconds. At C2, the cooldown becomes around 27 seconds. Her A1 passive can extend her 15-second duration to be 20 seconds. With the 20-second duration, Barbara's melody loop applies Hydra to allies up to 5 times, resulting in a 7.5 second reduction, making her new cooldown 19.5 seconds. In short, Barbara gets 100% uptime on her skill, and would likely put her in line with some 20 to 30 second rotations. As for the damage bonus on full HP main stats on a clamp set, Barbara can provide around 1200 damage bonus to the active character. This basically means it's Song of Days Past, but with 100% uptime. If you focus on maxing out the HP stats, a 2-piece build on Tenacity and Vorokasha allows that bonus to be slightly higher at 1400. I decided to look at that bonus with an Ayaka Freeze comp, since that can be a good Hydro substitute for the team. Not just for Kokomi's Hydro application, but also in Shenhe's flat damage bonus. Compared to Shenhe's damage buffs, Barbara is still about 14% weaker, which is balanced in terms of 4-star to 5-star comparisons. Compared to Stealing Tails, with the Clam build, we look at a roughly 9% increase, whereas with a 2-piece HP combo, it's a 13% increase in damage. This weapon is Barbara's best support weapon, but it isn't necessarily good for a main DPS Barbara. It can help to bridge the gap with her HP-based healing and attack-based damage, but if you're going all in on DPS, other options are much better. For alternative users, the only other person who can use it is Kokomi. When she uses her skill, she applies Hydra to herself, meaning she can technically get the damage bonus. But with it being a one-time application, it's only 5 seconds of uptime. If you were to use this weapon while in her burst state, the low uptime still makes it so that the overall damage bonus is worse than Everlasting Moonglow. That's all the info I have on Barbara's weapon, so next up is Dori.
There's nothing more beautiful than shiny Laura, glittering in the sun.
Maybe it's just a vocal minority, but Dori is seen as one of the most hated 4-stars in Genshin. I don't particularly love her either, but I won't discriminate. She'll still get her own signature weapon. Pyramid Scheme has a base attack of 510 and an ER substat of 45.9%. For its passive, the user gains a stack of investment for every 1 flat energy they generate. Then, when they use their burst, the investment collected becomes a 1.2 to 2.4% damage bonus for the active character, up to a maximum of 30 to 60%. This lasts for 14 seconds and investment can still be gained while off-field. To max out the cap, we're looking at 25 flat energy generated. Let's assume Dori is at 200% ER. First rotation, you just cast her skill once and then use her burst. Her A4 passive will generate 10 energy, which results in a 24% damage bonus for the active character. Pretty decent buff all things considered. In the second rotation onward, her burst generates 2.3 energy at level 8, which equals 13.8 energy in its 6-tick duration. If you were to cast her skill once in the second rotation, that's 23.8 energy, or 57.1% damage. with 2 skill uses that caps out the energy limit for a total of 60%. If Dori is at least burst level 10, then she generates 2.5 energy per tick, making it equal 15 energy total, so you only need 1 skill cast per rotation. 60% is a huge bonus, so why did I choose such a high number? Let's be honest, Dori needs it. She doesn't have personal damage, and you only really need to use her if you require insane amounts of healing or that extra battery. If you don't need that, she's easily replaceable. So to offset that low value, she has the massive supportive damage boost to compensate. Keep in mind that this bonus is non-snapshotable as it transfers between characters. A quick example includes Kuching Aggravate, where Dori increases her final burst hit by 30%. This bonus also incentivizes Dori to perform better as a DPS support for Quicken or Shove Overload comps, rather than focus on reactions like Kuki. Let's talk about alternative users. Technically speaking, any on-fielder can generate flat energy through their basic attacks, but it's a very low amount that would likely be negligible. At C0 there is only one character who can fully use this weapon, Razor. When he uses his press skill, he can generate sigils, and when he consumes a max of 3 sigils, he can generate a total of 15 flat energy, resulting in a 36% damage bonus. It's not as much as a 60% bonus, and you have to spend a bit of extra time to get those stacks, but it's still a hefty amount. That's all for Dori's kit, so next up is Sayu.
Do you know the Mujina? It looks similar to a Tanuki, but it's way cuter.
In a similar vein to Dori, Sayu's an excellent healer and swirl unit, but I always wish that she did a bit more. Mujima's Rest has a base attack of 510 and an EM substat of 165. For its passive, when the user deals skill hits, the entire party's transformative reaction damage is increased by 8 to 16% for 2 seconds, which can stack up to 6 times. If the user can reach max stacks, this duration is extended to 15 seconds. During this duration, the user gains 1 to 2 energy every 1.5 seconds. Originally, I planned to have the weapon grant an attack bonus based on the user's EM. Then I remembered that Makaira existed. So then I decided to see if the weapon could grant a flat amount of attack or EM. Then I remembered Mailed Flower existed. As you can see, Sayu already has great options, so coming up with something completely original was a bit difficult. Rather than give Sayu yet another off-field support weapon, I decided to hone in specifically on the on-field playstyle. The only way to get max stacks is to use her hold a bit longer. Sayu's skill can hit every 0.5 seconds, meaning that she can get max stacks within 3 seconds of rolling, so the player isn't necessarily forced to stay on field with her. And to ensure the player knows when they've hit the limit, we would add a 6-sided shuriken above her head, and every stack fills in one of the points. When you get the whole bonus, her party gets a 96% transformative reaction bonus. I find this to be most popular in Taser or Bloom-based teams since any party member triggering the reactions would benefit from the bonus. Sayu in particular has better synergy with the Claymore since she can be the trigger for reactions. In addition to Electro Charge, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, or Overload, she can use Swirl, meaning that when she drives reactions, she's actually driving too. I know that it might be disappointing that she's not going to buff Quicken reactions, but just because the weapon doesn't directly buff them doesn't mean you can't use it at all. Some of you may be aware of an Aggravated Swirl, which is basically a swirl that applies Electro on a Quicken target, thus granting the Aggravate bonus. An Aggravated Swirl is considered as transformative reactions, so you can benefit from the 96% bonus. Now, 96% bonus doesn't actually mean a 96% increase in damage. With how the formula works, it's actually much lower. With around 635 EM, something like Electrocharge gets a 20% increase in damage. Using VV, Swirl already has a 60% bonus, so the 96% bonus only brings it up to an 18% increase in damage. And finally, an Aggravated Swirl gets a 9% increase. That's a lot of info just for the damage bonus itself, but we still have to cover the other bonus, which is an energy regen mechanic. I'm absolutely positive that no other Claymore uses this mechanic. There's an interesting nuance to the passive. If you max out the stacks but swap out right after, you will generate 20 energy for its duration. The longer you stay on Sayu's hold roll, you will start to generate energy, but would also refresh the duration. If you were to max out her skill's duration, you extend the timer by an additional 7 seconds, allowing her to generate an additional 8 energy, equaling up to 28 energy. This allows you to focus less on ER substats and more on attack or EM. If your ER stat is high enough, you could get away with not using ER stands at all. Of course, this all depends on whether you want to burst every rotation or every other rotation. Here's a quick chart to determine her theoretical burst costs on different sands and different rolling times. For an off-field or quick swap support, this weapon is still great on Sayu, but some of the other options like Makaira, Mailed Flower, or Katsuragi Kiri are a lot more competitive. Once again, this weapon is tailored towards people who enjoy her roly-poly playstyle. For alternate users, we have Fremine. In his skill state, his normal attacks will deal additional skill damage, and this can count towards the stacks. You are able to generate max stacks, which allows you to get the 96% bonus. Fremenite doesn't necessarily scale with Shatter, he just capitalizes on it, so this weapon isn't the best on him. But if you're using him in a team like Hyper Bloom, where you would use him as an on-field driver, then this weapon actually can be good to boost the damage of the Hyper Blooms. This is all I have for Sayu, so let's move on to the final character, Yaoyao.
Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. Come on, let's get a move on.
I'm surprised this mechanic isn't utilized a bit more often since it's literally a simple addition. But take it from me, this weapon came with a lot of complicated effects. Adeptal Youth has a base attack of 510 and an HP substat of 41.3%. For its passive, when the user heals or overheals, the following effects will occur. The party's transformative reaction damage gains a flat bonus equal to 4 to 8% of the user's max HP, and amplifying or quicken damage gains a flat bonus equal to 1.4 to 2.8% of the user's max HP. This effect lasts for 5 seconds and can still be triggered even if the user is off-field. This bonus cannot exceed 50% of the reaction's original damage. The formula for this is very similar to a flat bonus for stats. The number is not affected by multiplicative bonuses. You just add it to the end of all the equations and you're done. I mentioned aggravated swirls earlier, and this weapon passive works in the exact same way. To take an example bonus, if a character like Kuki on a full EM build deals Hyper Bloom damage, Yaoyao would add an additional 3400 damage. And for Sayu on his build, Yaoyao provides roughly 1200, which is a nice bonus for the quicken damage, since that all gets buffed by damage percent and crit bonuses. I tried to make it so that both builds would gain a 15% increase in damage. I didn't bother looking at an amplifying reaction for 2 reasons. One, this is mainly focused on Yaoyao, who focuses more on dendro reactions, so amplifying is not going to work as well. Number 2, amplifying bonuses come at the very end of every single bonus, which means that the flat bonus at the very end would not actually equal as much. There's a couple of interesting patterns to this weapon. For one, the lower the user's EM stat, the more value they get from the flat bonus. So a 0 EM Hyper Bloom has a 75% increase in damage, but higher returns does not mean you want lower ER. The other interesting nuance is that the lower the actual multiplier for the reaction, the more valuable it gets. Hyper Bloom has a multiplier of 3, while Bloom is 2. With the same full EM stat build, Hyper Bloom gets a 15% increase in damage, but a normal Bloom Rupture gets about a 22% damage increase, and this bonus keeps going until it gets to the lowest multiplier of 0.25. Burning. Holy shit. When I looked at that number, well, I can't really recreate the reaction I made. But this is what it would have looked like. Burning has 4 ticks per second, so with a full EM build, this damage goes from 7600 per second to 21,000. I had Bloom and Quicken in mind, so this result was completely accidental. Initially, I loved it. I thought it was so cool that Burning would actually be a meta pick with this weapon. But then I remembered that in melee range, you would take burning damage from a nearby enemy. Unlike Bloom damage, you don't take reduced damage from burning, which means that even if you get too close to an enemy for even a second, that character is most likely dead. For the sake of balancing and player comfort, I chose to add a hard limit to the damage bonus. Bloom and Quicken are basically unaffected since their base multipliers are pretty high. For the reaction in particular, this does put some value back into EM, since you'd be required to get some in order to raise the limit of the damage. A 0 EM burn can only provide around 180 bonus damage, but at 726 EM, you can make that bonus deal around 950 additional damage. I know it's a bit disappointing that burning doesn't get the spotlight it deserves, so I promise I'll make it up to you. Anyone who's seen my community post already knows this, but the next video is going to be a character creator, and it'll be my take on how we buff a burning unit. It'll use the same mechanic where a stat increases burning by a flat amount, so you can consider this a teaser for what to expect later on. For alternative users, the only pull-on users who can consistently heal are Chevres and Mika. Chevres falls under the niche of Overload. She doesn't actually buff the reaction itself, but rather capitalizes on it through its Res Shred. With this weapon, her HP scaling does make Overload deal a bit more damage, which is a nice boost. Mika can provide the same bonus to Superconduct. In those teams, you usually trigger the reaction pretty frequently, so using this weapon on him can allow everyone to deal extra reaction damage in a physical-based team. However, due to its lower multiplier, it would quickly reach its hard limit, and this means it wouldn't actually be dealing much extra damage with this weapon. Unfortunately, Superconduct teams don't get their spotlight yet either. Hi everyone, post-editing note here. I forgot that Mika can actually work in a Shatter-based comp, so you could consider that if you want to use this weapon on him. Keep in mind that with lower EM, you do reach the cap pretty easily, so it might be better to stack a little bit to get that extra bonus. Alright, that'll do it for this video of signature weapons. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like and subscribing to support the channel. Let me know which of the ideas you liked the most, what you would change, or any alternate weapon ideas for these characters. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!